Tonight, you are about to spend a winter night as a Viking, not on the deck of a famous longship, not in the middle of a glorious battle, but in the quiet hours that almost no saga ever cared to describe. The long night, the freezing wind, the simple struggle of staying warm until morning. If you had imagined Viking life as endless feasts beneath brightly lit halls, you may be surprised by how ordinary and how demanding this night truly is. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy these quiet journeys through history. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let us travel together to Scandinavia more than 1,000 years ago. The last light of the winter afternoon disappears long before you reach home. The sun has barely climbed above the horizon today, and now it has already slipped behind distant hills, leaving only a faint blue glow across the frozen landscape. Snow covers everything. It softens the rough outlines of rocks. It hides the narrow path between scattered farms. Even the familiar ground beneath your boots feels uncertain. The air is painfully cold. Each breath leaves your mouth in a cloud of white mist before vanishing into the darkness. The wind comes in slow but powerful gusts, carrying tiny crystals of snow that sting your face whenever you turn toward it. You pull your wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. The heavy fabric helps, but it does not stop the cold completely. Moisture from your own breath has already begun to freeze along the edge of your beard, or if you are imagining yourself as a woman, along the woolen scarf wrapped around your face. Your leather boots crunch softly through packed snow. Inside them, thick woolen socks keep your feet warm enough to continue walking. Without them, this journey could become dangerous surprisingly quickly. Winter in Viking Age Scandinavia is not an enemy that shouts. It is patient. It waits. It slowly steals warmth from fingers, ears, noses, and toes. Long before anyone realizes real danger has arrived. Around you, the landscape feels endless. Dark pine forests stand silently beneath fresh snow. Their branches sag under its weight. Every now and then, a small shower of snow slips from a branch, disappearing almost without a sound. There are no glowing windows scattered across the hills. No distant streetlights. No roads. Only darkness. And somewhere ahead, home. The farm itself is difficult to see until you are almost upon it. The buildings seem to rise naturally out of the snow. Low, dark, built to endure the weather rather than impress anyone passing by. The Longhouse stretches across the frozen ground like a sleeping animal. Its thick turf roof is hidden beneath another layer of snow. Wooden walls, blackened by years of smoke, blend into the night. Only one sign of life reaches you before anything else. A faint orange glow. Not bright. Not welcoming in the modern sense. Just enough light escaping through the smoke opening high above the roof to tell you that the central fire is still burning. Someone remembered to feed it before darkness fell. That single fire means everything. Warmth, food, light, dry clothing, conversation, sleep. Without it, surviving winter would become almost impossible. As you walk closer, new sounds slowly emerge from the silence. The wind still whistles across the roof. Somewhere nearby, a dog gives one lazy bark before recognizing your familiar scent. Behind the heavy timber walls, you hear muffled voices. Someone laughs. A wooden bowl is placed onto a table. Firewood shifts inside the hearth with a quiet crack. The world outside feels empty. The world inside is alive. You reach the thick wooden door. Its surface is rough beneath your gloved hand. The iron latch feels painfully cold even through the leather. For one brief moment, you pause. Behind this door waits the center of Viking family life. Not a palace, not a warrior's hall filled with endless drinking, but something far more important. A place built to survive another winter night. You push the heavy door inward. A wave of warm, smoky air rolls over you. The smell reaches you before your eyes adjust. Burning birch wood, wool drying near the fire, cooked barley, animal hides, freshly split timber, smoke, always smoke. The wind disappears behind you as the door closes with a deep wooden thud. Outside, the Scandinavian winter continues without mercy. Inside, the longest part of the night is only just beginning. The warmth does not greet you all at once. It arrives slowly. First against your face, then your hands. Finally, your feet, where the cold has settled deep inside your boots. For a few quiet moments, you simply stand near the doorway, allowing your eyes to adjust to the dim light. After the blue darkness outside, the Longhouse almost seems to glow. Not because it is brightly lit. Quite the opposite. The only real source of light comes from the open hearth burning at the center of the building. Its flames rise and fall gently, sending soft orange light dancing across rough timber walls. Everything else exists in shadow. The smoke drifts upward before slowly gathering beneath the roof. Unlike a modern chimney, there is no narrow stone flue carrying every trace of smoke away. Instead, much of it lingers inside the building, gradually finding its way toward the smoke hole above the fire. It is enough to make your eyes water for a moment. The smell of wood smoke has soaked into almost everything here. The beams overhead, the woven wool clothing hanging from pegs, the wooden furniture, even the animal skins spread across the sleeping platforms. For the people who live here, this scent is as ordinary as fresh air. In fact, the constant smoke serves an important purpose. It helps preserve the heavy wooden roof from insects and rot. It dries damp clothing. It even discourages fleas and other pests from becoming too comfortable indoors. The building itself feels surprisingly large. A Viking longhouse is exactly what its name suggests. Long, rather than wide. From where you stand, you can see almost its entire length stretching into the shadows. Massive oak posts support the heavy roof overhead. Each one bears the marks of axes that shaped it years ago. The wood is sturdy, practical, and only lightly decorated. This is not a place built for luxury. It is built to survive generations of harsh winters. Along both walls run raised wooden platforms. By day they serve as benches where people work, eat, repair tools, weave cloth, carve wood, and tell stories. By night those same platforms become beds. Bundles of straw lie beneath thick sheepskins and furs, creating sleeping places that are far softer than the bare floor below. Privacy is almost non-existent. Entire families sleep together in the same great room. Parents, children, grandparents, sometimes guests. sometimes hired workers, occasionally even travelers who have earned a night's shelter from the weather. Personal space is a modern luxury. Warmth in winter matters far more. Your boots leave small patches of melting snow on the packed earthen floor. In some longhouses, the floor is simple, hard-packed earth. In others, wooden planks cover parts of the interior. Fresh rushes or straw are scattered across walking areas, helping absorb moisture and making the ground less slippery during wet weather. You loosen the clasp of your heavy wool cloak. Almost immediately, cooler air trapped beneath the fabric escapes. Your shoulders feel lighter. Nearby, wooden pegs driven into the wall hold cloaks, mittens, belts, and bags. Several garments already hang there, still damp from the day's work. By morning, they will be much drier after spending hours near the fire. A low wooden table stands beside one of the benches. It is sturdy but plainly made. Its surface bears countless knife marks left by years of preparing meals. There are no polished cabinets, no glass windows, no painted walls. Nearly everything inside this house has been made by hand, repaired by hand, and expected to last for many years. Even the bowls resting on the table tell their own story. Most are carved from wood. A few are made from soapstone, prized because it holds heat well and survives repeated use over the fire. Iron exists, but it is valuable. Every nail, every cooking hook, every knife blade, every iron fitting represents many hours of skilled work. Nothing here is wasted. Your eyes drift upward once more. The roof disappears into darkness above the smoke. Somewhere beyond it, snow continues to fall across the Scandinavian countryside. You can no longer hear the wind clearly. Only an occasional low whistle slips through tiny gaps in the timber walls. The longhouse itself seems to breathe. The fire crackles softly. Wood settles with quiet creaks. Someone turns over on a sleeping bench. A child whispers something before falling silent again. This is not the grand hall often shown in stories about Viking kings. Most people never lived in such places. For ordinary farming families, the longhouse was workshop, kitchen, dining room, bedroom, storehouse, and refuge all at once. Every season of life unfolded beneath this single roof. Children took their first steps here. Meals were shared here. Clothing was woven here. Tools were repaired here. The elderly spent their final winters here. Outside, the frozen world feels vast and unforgiving. Inside, every beam, every fur blanket, every glowing ember reminds you of one simple truth. For a Viking family, the longhouse was far more than a house. It was the difference between enduring the winter and being claimed by it. Your eyes are drawn, again and again, to the heart of the longhouse. The fire, not because it burns brightly. It doesn't. The flames rise only knee-high, licking at thick pieces of birch and pine that have been carefully arranged to burn slowly through the night. Every log has value. Every ember matters. No one here feeds the fire carelessly. The hearth sits at the very center of the building. It is little more than a long rectangle edged with stones, filled with glowing coals, burning wood, and soft grey ash. There is no iron stove, no brick fireplace. Nothing separates the people from the warmth except a respectful distance and years of experience. The heat spreads unevenly. Closest to the flames, your face becomes pleasantly warm. Turn slightly, and the side facing away from the fire immediately notices the chill. This constant dance between warmth and cold is simply part of winter life. You take another step closer. The warmth reaches your stiff fingers almost instantly. The tingling sensation is strangely satisfying after the long walk through the snow. Someone quietly turns a log using a long wooden pole. Not because the fire is dying, because keeping a steady fire requires constant attention. Too much wood and precious fuel is wasted. Too little, and the house begins to cool. Finding the right balance is a skill learned over many winters. Outside, forests may seem endless, but cutting trees is hard work. The wood must be felled, trimmed, carried home, split into manageable pieces, and stacked where it can dry for months. Fresh wood burns poorly. It smokes heavily. It gives less heat. Dry wood is worth planning for long before winter ever arrives. Much of the household's year quietly revolves around this simple truth. Prepare enough firewood, or suffer when the snow comes. Above the flames hangs an iron chain suspended from one of the roof beams. From it hangs a blackened cooking pot. Its sides are stained by countless meals. Soup, stew, porridge, broth. Nothing extravagant. Everything nourishing. The pot rarely sits empty for long during the coldest months. Nearby rests a long-handled wooden ladle, polished smooth by years of use. Beside it lie iron tongs and a simple fire rake. Few tools, constantly used. The fire is doing far more than cooking dinner. It dries damp boots left near the edge of the hearth. It warms cold hands after hours spent outdoors. It slowly removes moisture from wool cloaks soaked by snow. Even the wooden walls benefit from its steady heat, staying drier than they otherwise would through the long Scandinavian winter. As you watch the flames, you notice something else. Nobody sits directly against the fire. Instead, everyone naturally forms a circle around it. Some are repairing clothing by the flickering light. A woman carefully guides a bone needle through thick wool. An older man smooths the handle of a wooden tool with a small knife. Two children quietly play with carved wooden figures, speaking in soft voices so as not to disturb the peaceful evening. The fire creates more than warmth. It creates a gathering place. Without anyone needing to say a word, the entire rhythm of the household revolves around this glowing center. Here meals are shared. Stories are told. Problems are discussed. Children learn by watching older hands at work. The fire is the closest thing this home has to a heartbeat. Occasionally, sparks drift upward into the layer of smoke hanging beneath the roof. They vanish before reaching the timber beams overhead. The smoke itself seems almost alive, slowly swirling, never completely still. It softens the light throughout the room, making every corner appear gentler than it truly is. Modern visitors often imagine this smoke would have made daily life unbearable. It certainly stings your eyes at first. It catches in your throat. But those who grow up here hardly notice it anymore. Over the years, it simply becomes another part of home. Outside, the temperature continues to fall. The cold presses against the thick timber walls, searching for every tiny gap. Occasionally, a faint draft slips inside, brushing against your ankles before disappearing into the warmth rising from the hearth. The battle between fire and winter never truly ends. It simply pauses until morning. As another log settles onto the glowing bed of coals, the longhouse fills with a gentle crackling sound. No one looks up. No one seems surprised. It is one of the most familiar sounds they know. A sound heard every evening, every winter, for countless generations. Without this fire, the longhouse would become dark, damp, and bitterly cold within hours. Meals could not be prepared. Wet clothing would freeze instead of drying. The family would struggle to sleep. And surviving the endless northern winter would become far more difficult than most people today could imagine. You extend your hands one la, scent time toward the glowing embers. The warmth sinks slowly into your skin. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside, the fire quietly promises that everyone beneath this roof will live to see another dawn. Now that the warmth has begun to return to your hands and face, you finally notice the weight of your clothing. It is heavier than you expected. Not uncomfortable, simply substantial. Every layer serves a purpose. Fashion exists. Decoration exists. But during a Scandinavian winter, staying alive matters far more than looking impressive. You unfasten your thick wool cloak and hang it on one of the wooden pegs near the hearth. Tiny drops of melted snow begin to fall onto the packed floor below. The cloak itself is densely woven. Its rough fibers trap pockets of warm air while still allowing moisture to escape. Unlike many modern fabrics, wool continues to keep you warm even after becoming damp. That single quality makes it one of the most valuable materials a Viking family owns. Beneath the cloak, you wear a long wool tunic. Its fabric feels coarse against your fingertips, but surprisingly comfortable after years of use. It was not woven in a distant workshop. Someone in this household likely spun the wool by hand, thread by thread, then wove the cloth on a large upright loom that stood inside this very longhouse during the warmer months. Making enough fabric to clothe a family was an enormous task. From shearing sheep, to washing the wool, to combing it, to spinning it into yarn, to weaving it into cloth. Hundreds of hours of work disappeared into every finished garment. Nothing was made quickly. Nothing was wasted. Around your waist sits a simple leather belt. It holds a small knife in a plain sheath. Almost every adult carries one. Not as a weapon, as a tool. It slices bread, cuts rope, shapes wood, repairs leather, prepares food. A day without a knife would be far more inconvenient than dangerous. Your trousers, if you imagine yourself as a man, or your long dress beneath the tunic, if you picture yourself as a woman, are also made from sturdy wool. The colors are softer than many people expect. Natural gray, brown, cream, muted blues produced from plants, sometimes faded reds. Bright clothing exists, but rich dyes require time, skill, and valuable materials. Most people dress in colors provided by nature herself. Your feet are wrapped carefully in thick woolen socks. Over them sit leather shoes fastened with simple straps. They are flexible rather than rigid, comfortable for walking, easy to repair, far less waterproof than modern boots. Snow eventually works its way inside. So drying footwear beside the evening fire becomes part of nearly every winter routine. You remove your gloves. Your fingers are slightly red from the cold, but already recovering. The gloves themselves are lined with wool and stitched together using strong linen thread. A loose seam is repaired the moment someone notices it. Replacing an entire pair would require far more work than simply mending one small tear. That attitude extends to nearly everything inside the household. Repair, reuse, preserve. Nothing useful is casually thrown away. As you glance around the room, you notice subtle differences in everyone's clothing. An older man's cloak has been patched so skillfully that the repair almost disappears into the original weave. A young girl's sleeves have been lengthened with extra fabric as she grows taller. One woman's apron dress is decorated with beautifully crafted bronze brooches that catch the firelight whenever she moves. These small details quietly reveal something important. Even in a world focused on survival, people still cared about beauty. Not through endless wardrobes, but through careful craftsmanship. Well-made clothing represented patience, skill, and pride. Jewelry, too, served more than one purpose. The oval brooches worn by many Viking women helped secure their garments while also displaying the work of talented metalworkers. Glass beads, amber, silver, and occasionally imported materials found their way into necklaces worn on ordinary days as well as special occasions. Trade connected Scandinavia with lands stretching far beyond the northern seas. Even here, in a quiet farming household, distant worlds sometimes rested around someone's neck. Near the hearth, your cloak has already begun to dry. Thin wisps of steam rise almost invisibly from its surface before disappearing into the smoky air. The familiar smell of damp wool fills the room for a few moments. No one pays it any attention. It is simply another scent of winter. Your shoulders feel lighter now. Your body slowly relaxes. The stiffness left by the cold walk fades with every passing minute. Outside, the snow still clings to the frozen fields. The wind still searches the walls for every tiny opening. But inside the longhouse, wrapped in layers of wool, linen, leather, and carefully prepared furs, you begin to understand something many people overlook. Vikings did not survive northern winters because they ignored the cold. They survived because, over countless generations, they learned exactly how to dress for it. Every stitch, every layer, every repaired seam, every carefully spun thread was another quiet victory over the Scandinavian winter. By now, the day's work is over. The animals have been tended. The tools have been put away. The fire burns steadily at the center of the longhouse. Outside, the winter night has settled completely over the land. There is nowhere else to be. No reason to leave the warmth behind. It is time for supper. No one rushes. Meals in a Viking household follow the rhythm of the day rather than the clock. Everyone gathers naturally around the hearth, where the warmth is strongest and the cooking pot has been simmering for hours. The smell reaches you before the food does. It is rich, but not overwhelming. Earthy, comforting. The scent of barley, root vegetables, herbs, and slow-cooked meat mingles with the familiar aroma of wood smoke. Nothing here is heavily seasoned. Salt is precious. Pepper is an expensive import that few ordinary families would ever taste. Instead, flavor comes from careful cooking, fresh ingredients when they are available, and herbs gathered during the warmer months and dried for winter. Someone lifts the heavy iron pot from the fire using a hooked pole. Steam curls upward into the smoky air. For a brief moment, everyone pauses. Even the children watch quietly. Food is never taken for granted. Not after a long northern winter. Wooden bowls are passed from hand to hand. Each one is slightly different. Some are smooth from decades of use. Others still show the marks of the knife that carved them. No matching sets. No polished ceramics. Just sturdy objects made to last. A generous ladle of stew fills your bowl. The broth is thick and warming. Inside are pieces of barley, onions, perhaps a few carrots or parsnips if the family's winter stores have lasted well. Small pieces of lamb or beef drift beneath the surface. In some households, it might be goat. In others, pork. The exact meal changes with the season, the region, and the family's fortunes. But one thing remains constant. Every ingredient has been carefully preserved to carry the household through winter. Fresh vegetables are rare now. Instead, food stored months ago quietly sustains everyone around the fire. You lift the wooden spoon. The first mouthful is almost too hot after the freezing walk home. Yet the warmth spreads through your body almost immediately. It reaches places the fire alone cannot. A simple meal, but exactly what the body needs after hours in the cold. Nearby, dark bread rests on a wooden board. Made from barley, rye, or oats, it is denser than most modern bread. Sometimes it is fresh. Sometimes it has been baked days earlier and grows firmer with time. Either way, nothing goes to waste. Hard bread can be softened in soup. Every crumb has value. A small piece of butter sits beside it. In wealthier households, there may also be soft cheese, preserved fish, or smoked meat. During particularly good years, dried apples or hazelnuts might appear at the table as well. Winter meals are shaped by preparation, not abundance. Months before the first snowfall, families worked constantly to preserve what they had grown, gathered, hunted, or raised. Fish were dried or smoked. Meat was salted. Dairy became butter or cheese. Grain was stored carefully in dry buildings where moisture and mice could do as little damage as possible. Every successful harvest quietly determined how comfortable the coming winter would be. As the meal continues, conversation remains calm. No one speaks loudly. The room is filled instead with gentle voices, the scrape of wooden spoons against bowls, and the occasional crackle from the hearth. A child smiles after being handed an extra piece of bread. An older woman quietly reminds him to finish the stew first. Across the fire, someone tears another piece from the loaf and offers it to a neighbor without a word. Sharing food comes naturally here, not because everyone has plenty, because everyone understands how quickly fortune can change. One failed harvest, one harsh winter, one season of sickness among the animals. Any of these could make stored food disappear far sooner than expected. That knowledge encourages gratitude more effectively than any spoken lesson. You take another slow bite. The stew has cooled slightly now. The flavors become easier to notice. The sweetness of cooked onions, the earthy grain, the richness of the meat. Nothing extravagant, Nothing complicated. Simply honest food prepared with care. As the bowls gradually empty, someone pours fresh ale into simple wooden cups. For adults, weak ale is an ordinary part of daily life. It is not consumed for celebration alone. The brewing process often made it safer to drink than stagnant surface water, and its strength was usually much lower than many modern people imagine. Children, however, often drank milk when it was available or watered beverages, depending on the household and the season. No one lingers over dessert. There isn't one. The meal itself is tea. Heat comfort. The warmth is the luxury. The company is enough. One by one, empty bowls are stacked near the washing bucket. Nothing is left behind except the pleasant feeling of a full stomach and the quiet satisfaction that, for another evening at least, the family has enough. Outside, the wind still sweeps across the snow-covered fields. Inside, with warm food in your stomach and the fire glowing steadily beside you, the long winter night suddenly feels much less formidable. For a little while, winter can wait. With supper finished, the longhouse grows quieter. Wooden bowls have been stacked. The cooking pot now hangs a little farther from the fire, keeping what remains of the stew warm until morning. Some people return to their evening tasks. Others simply rest, enjoying the comfort that follows a hot meal. As you settle onto one of the wooden benches, you begin to notice something unusual. The house is not occupied only by people. At first, it is easy to overlook. A soft snort, the quiet rustle of straw, the gentle sound of hooves shifting against wooden boards. Only then do you realize that some of the family's animals are here as well. To many modern visitors, the idea might seem surprising, or even unpleasant. But for a Viking family living through a Scandinavian winter, it makes perfect sense. The cold outside is relentless. Every living creature must survive it together. In many longhouses, especially on ordinary farms, one end of the building was reserved for livestock. Not every animal lived indoors all winter, and practices varied from region to region. But it was common for valuable animals to be sheltered within the same structure as the family, separated by partitions or occupying a different section of the longhouse. The arrangement protected them from the worst of the weather. It also protected the family's future. A healthy cow meant milk when spring returned. Strong sheep meant fresh wool. Goats provided both milk and hardy offspring. Oxen could pull heavy loads and plow fields once the ground thawed. Losing even one animal during winter could make the coming year much more difficult. The animals offered something in return as well. As they breathed, they released warmth into the building. Not enough to heat the entire house on their own, but enough to make a noticeable difference during the longest nights. Combined with thick timber walls, an insulated turf roof, and the ever-burning hearth, that extra warmth helped create a more stable indoor temperature than the freezing world outside. The air carries their familiar scent. Hay, wool, leather, earth. It mixes naturally with wood smoke and cooked grain until it becomes part of the longhouse itself. No one wrinkles a nose. No one complains. These smells are simply the smell of home. A young goat lifts its head as you pass. Its ears twitch for a moment before it settles back onto the straw. Nearby, a sheep shifts its weight with a quiet sigh. One of the family dogs lies curled close to the fire, opening one eye just long enough to see that everything is as it should be before drifting back towards sleep. Cats move more quietly. You barely notice one until it slips between the shadows near a grain chest. Its work never truly ends. Mice are constant visitors during winter, attracted by stores of grain that have been gathered so carefully over the past year. A good cat protects those precious supplies far better than any trap. The family values it for that reason as much as for its quiet company. From somewhere beyond the partition comes the slow chewing of hay. Steady, patient, almost rhythmic. The sound blends with the crackling fire until it becomes another peaceful layer of the evening. You begin to understand that the Longhouse is not merely a shelter for people. It is the center of an entire small world. Humans, animals, food, tools, clothing, firewood. Everything needed to survive the winter exists beneath this single roof. The walls do more than keep out the wind. They gather life itself into one protected place. Outside, wolves may roam the forests. Snow continues to fall across frozen fields. The darkness stretches for countless miles. Inside, every familiar sound offers quiet reassurance. The dog breathing beside the hearth. The sheep shifting in the straw. The distant stamp of a hoof. These are not interruptions to the silence. They are proof that life continues. As the evening deepens, the animals become still. One by one, they settle into the calm rhythm of the night. Their breathing slows. The house itself seems to relax with them. You lean back against the smooth timber wall, listening. There is something unexpectedly comforting about sharing this space. Modern homes often separate people from the animals that sustain them. Here, no such distance exists. Everyone depends upon everyone else. The family cares for the animals through the hardest months of winter. In return, the animals provide food, clothing, labor, and in their own quiet way, a little more warmth against the endless northern cold. It may not be the image of Viking life found in heroic sagas. Yet it is one of the reasons those families endured winter year after year. Not through grand adventures, but through countless small acts of care, shared beneath the shelter of a single longhouse, while the snow continued to fall beyond its walls. The evening grows quieter with every passing moment. The conversation that filled the longhouse after supper begins to fade. One by one, simple tasks come to an end. A knife is returned to its place. A wooden bowl is dried and set upon a shelf. The last damp cloak is turned once more toward the warmth of the fire. No one announces that it is time for bed. There is no need. The darkness outside has already made the decision. Without bright lamps or glowing screens, people naturally follow the rhythm of daylight. During winter, that often means settling down long before what we would consider a normal bedtime. The fire still burns steadily. It will not be allowed to die. Not tonight. Not on a night this cold. Instead of building a great blaze, someone carefully rearranges the burning logs, drawing them closer together. Fresh wood is added sparingly. The goal is not brilliant light. It is lasting warmth. A slow, steady bed of glowing embers can keep the longhouse comfortable for many hours, while using far less fuel than tall dancing flames. You watch as the sleeping places slowly come to life. Along each side of the longhouse, the raised wooden benches that served as seats during the day begin their nightly transformation. Bundles of fresh straw are spread where needed. Some households replace the straw regularly. Others simply fluff and turn it, helping it remain dry and comfortable for as long as possible. The straw provides more than softness. Tiny pockets of trapped air create insulation between the sleeper and the cold wood beneath. Over the straw come thick animal skins. Sheepskins are especially common. Their wool still attached, they create a warm, surprisingly comfortable surface. Some families also own reindeer hides, goat skins, or heavier furs reserved for the coldest nights. Each layer has been carefully prepared over many days of work. Nothing here appeared by accident. Every hide had to be cleaned, scraped, stretched, dried, sometimes smoked, then softened by hand until it became flexible enough for daily use. The blankets are equally practical. Heavy wool woven during countless hours of spinning and weaving. Not perfectly smooth, not perfectly even, but wonderfully warm. As you touch one, you notice its reassuring weight. It settles over your shoulders like another protective layer against the winter outside. There are no mattresses filled with springs. No soft pillows stuffed with synthetic fibers. A rolled wool cloak. A folded fur. Perhaps a sack filled with feathers if the household is especially fortunate. That is more than enough. After a day of physical labor, comfort is measured less by luxury than by warmth and shelter. Children climb eagerly onto the sleeping platforms. One curls beneath a sheepskin almost immediately. Another whispers something that makes a sibling laugh quietly before an older voice gently reminds them that the house is settling down for the night. Within moments, the laughter fades into soft giggles, then silence. Across the room, an elderly woman carefully folds her outer cloak before placing it beneath her head. Nothing is left carelessly on the floor. Every item has its place. A habit learned through years of living, where every possession requires time and effort to replace. You notice that no one sleeps alone unless there is a reason. Families remain close together. Parents beside children. Brothers beside brothers. Grandparents nearby. Sharing body heat is practical. Reassuring. Entirely ordinary. Privacy, as many people understand it today, simply plays a much smaller role than comfort and survival. The firelight dances gently across the timber beams overhead. The shadows have grown longer now. Most of the longhouse is illuminated only by glowing embers rather than open flames. The room feels softer, quieter. The smell of smoke lingers gently in the warm air, mixing with clean wool, dry straw, and weathered wood. You remove the last of your outer clothing. Your boots are placed near the hearth where they can dry through the night. If left outside, they would be stiff with ice by morning. Even inside the longhouse, damp leather must be cared for carefully if it is to last through another season. As you lower yourself onto the bed, the straw shifts softly beneath your weight. It is firmer than any modern mattress. Yet after the long walk through snow and the warmth of a hearty supper, it feels remarkably welcoming. A thick wool blanket is pulled over you. Then another. The cold that clung stubbornly to your body all evening finally begins to disappear. Somewhere nearby, someone quietly murmurs a short evening prayer. Another traces the familiar shape of a protective symbol carved into a wooden bedpost. Beliefs varied across the Viking Age. Some families honored the old Norse gods. Others, especially toward the later centuries, had begun embracing Christianity. Yet, regardless of faith, the hope remained the same, that everyone beneath this roof would wake safely when morning came. Outside, the wind continues its endless journey across the frozen fields. Snow gathers silently upon the turf roof. The world beyond the walls grows colder with every passing hour. Inside, wrapped in wool, resting upon straw and sheepskins, surrounded by the quiet breathing of family and the gentle glow of the hearth, you begin to understand a simple truth. A Viking bed was never meant to impress. It was meant to carry you safely through one more winter night. And tonight, that is more than enough. By the time everyone has settled into their beds, the night has deepened. Whatever pale light lingered beyond the walls is gone. The Scandinavian landscape has disappeared into complete darkness. Only the snow reflects the faintest hint of moonlight somewhere behind the thick clouds. From inside the Longhouse, you cannot see any of it, but you can hear it. The wind has changed. Earlier, it drifted across the fields in long, gentle breaths. Now it arrives in stronger gusts. Each one presses against the timber walls before moving on into the darkness. The Longhouse answers with quiet creaks. Not the sound of weakness. The sound of a living structure adjusting to the weather, just as it has done through countless winters. The thick roof of timber, birch bark, and layers of turf was built with harsh weather in mind. Its great weight helps hold everything firmly in place. Above your head, fresh snow continues to gather. Each new layer adds another blanket of insulation, helping trap the precious warmth inside. The storm itself becomes an unexpected ally. The colder the night grows, the more valuable that snowy covering becomes. You lie still beneath your blankets, listening. There is no traffic, no distant engines, no electric hum filling the silence. Only nature, the voice of winter itself. The wind whistles softly where it finds tiny gaps around the doorway. Loose strands of thatch near the smoke opening rustle overhead. Every now and then, a handful of snow slips from the roof, landing outside with a muffled thump. The sounds are never alarming. They are simply reminders that the world beyond these walls never truly rests. Somewhere far across the frozen valley, a raven calls once before falling silent. Later, from much farther away, comes the faint howl of wolves. The sound is carried by the wind until it becomes almost impossible to tell whether it is growing closer or drifting away. No one inside the Longhouse reacts. The heavy walls, the warm fire, the family gathered together. These offer protection enough. The wolves belong to the forest. You belong here. The fire has burned lower now. Tall flames have given way to glowing coals, their deep orange light pulsing gently beneath a thin layer of ash. Every few minutes, a small piece of wood settles with a soft crack. Tiny sparks rise into the smoky darkness before disappearing from sight. The room grows dimmer, not darker in an unsettling way, only calmer. The shadows soften until the edges of every object begin to blur together. The carved chest near the wall, the hanging cloaks, the stacked firewood, the sleeping forms beneath wool blankets. Everything becomes part of one peaceful scene. You notice how different darkness feels here. Modern darkness often disappears with the touch of a switch. This darkness cannot. It surrounds the Longhouse completely. Beyond the reach of the fire lies a world that no one wishes to explore until morning. Yet there is no fear in that thought, only acceptance. Winter nights are long. That is simply the way of the North. Your breathing gradually slows. Around you, the quiet rhythm of the household becomes easier to hear. Someone turns over beneath a blanket. A child lets out a sleepy sigh before settling again. The old family dog lifts its head briefly as another gust shakes the walls. Its ears twitch. After listening for a moment, it lowers its head once more. If the dog is calm, everyone else can remain calm as well. Near the animal enclosure, a sheep shifts softly in the straw. A goat stamps one hoof before becoming still. The familiar sounds blend together until they resemble a gentle lullaby. Outside, the storm continues to build. Snow drifts slowly against the walls. Fence posts disappear beneath fresh powder. The narrow path leading to the Longhouse gradually vanishes beneath the falling snow. By morning, someone will need to clear it before the day can truly begin. But that is tomorrow's work. Tonight belongs to rest. The warmth beneath your blankets feels even more precious now that you can hear the wind searching endlessly for a way inside. It reminds you of something easy to forget in the comfort of modern life. A house is more than wood, more than walls, more than a roof. It is a promise that no matter how fiercely winter rages beyond the door, there is still a place where the fire burns, where family sleeps, and where another dawn can be awaited in peace. As the storm sings softly across the snowy fields, you close your eyes. The Longhouse remains warm. The fire still glows. And somewhere beyond the darkness, unseen beneath the heavy winter sky, the first hours of a new day begin their slow approach. Sleep has not claimed everyone just yet. The youngest children have already drifted into dreams, wrapped tightly beneath wool blankets and soft sheepskins. But a few adults remain awake, not because there is work left to finish, simply because winter evenings have always offered something precious. Time. During the busiest months of spring, summer, and harvest, every hour of daylight belongs to labor. Fields must be planted, animals cared for, hay gathered, wood cut, repairs completed before the weather changes again. But winter slows the world. The land rests beneath snow. Travel becomes difficult. The long nights invite something that summer rarely allows. Conversation. The fire crackles quietly at the center of the room. Its light is lower now, casting long golden shadows that gently sway across the timber walls. The warmth reaches only so far. Everyone who remains awake naturally sits a little closer together. No one needs to suggest it. The fire has always known how to gather people. For a little while, no one speaks. There is no awkwardness in the silence, only comfort. The sound of burning wood fills the room more completely than words ever could. Then, almost without warning, an older voice begins to tell a story. Not loudly, not dramatically, slowly, patiently, as though the tale has been spoken hundreds of times before. Perhaps it has, long before books filled shelves, before newspapers, Before radios or glowing screens, stories traveled from one generation to the next by memory alone. Every telling helped preserve them. Children listened. Then one day, they became adults. Years later, they repeated those same stories to children of their own. Some tales speak of real ancestors whose names are still remembered within the family. A grandfather who survived a brutal winter. A woman whose careful planning saved enough grain to carry everyone through a year of poor harvests. A fisherman who returned safely after a dangerous storm at sea. These stories may never become famous. No skald will sing them in the courts of kings. Yet inside this longhouse, they matter deeply. They belong to the people gathered here. Other stories travel much farther. They speak of Odin wandering the world in disguise, seeking wisdom wherever it can be found. Of mighty Thor riding across the sky as thunder rolls above the mountains. Of clever Loki, whose tricks sometimes solve problems, and just as often create them. Some evenings, someone recalls the great ash tree, Yggdrasil, whose branches and roots connect the 9 worlds in Norse belief. Its roots stretch deep into mysterious realms. Its highest branches reach toward the heavens. Every creature, every god, every giant, and every human exists somewhere within that vast living cosmos. The children who are still awake listen with wide eyes. They have heard these stories before, yet they never seem to grow old. The details may change slightly with each storyteller. A phrase remembered differently. A forgotten name replaced by another. That is the nature of spoken tradition. It breathes. It changes gently over time. Yet its heart remains the same. The adults smile quietly from time to time. Not because every tale is cheerful. Many are thoughtful. Some are sad. Others remind listeners that courage is measured not only on battlefields, but also in patience, generosity, and keeping one's word. These lessons are woven naturally into the stories. No one pauses to explain them. They simply become part of the listener's understanding. Outside, the wind continues its endless journey through the dark forests. Inside, another kind of journey unfolds. One carried by words, by memory, by imagination. The fire burns lower still. The storyteller's voice becomes softer. Several listeners have already fallen asleep where they sit, their breathing slow and peaceful. No one wakes them. The story continues anyway. Perhaps it is no longer being told only for those who remain awake. Perhaps it is also being told for the house itself, for the fire, for the generations who spoke these same words before, and for those who will one day speak them again. At last, the final sentence comes, not with excitement, not with applause, only with a quiet nod. The room falls silent once more. The silence feels different now. Full, comfortable, as though the old stories have settled gently among the sleeping family, like another warm blanket. Outside, winter still rules the land. Inside, something equally important has been passed from one generation to the next. Not through ink, not through stone, but through the simple act of one voice speaking, while another listens beside the fire. The stories have ended. The last quiet voices fade into silence. One by one, the adults settle beneath their blankets, and soon the only light left in the longhouse comes from the glowing bed of embers at the center of the room. No one speaks now, yet the house is far from silent. As you lie awake, your ears slowly begin to notice sounds that would have escaped you earlier in the evening. The Longhouse has its own voice. It speaks softly, patiently, without words. The first sound is the fire, not the lively crackling of bright flames. Those have almost disappeared. Now the hearth breathes in slow rhythms. A glowing log shifts slightly. A tiny pocket of sap, hidden deep inside the wood, bursts with a quiet pop. Ash settles gently over the red coals. Every few minutes, another ember glows brighter before fading once again. The fire never truly sleeps. Neither does the house. Above you, one of the great roof beams releases a slow creak. The heavy timbers have expanded in the warmth of the fire and now respond to the changing temperature outside. It is such a familiar sound that no one even stirs. The building has made these noises for years, perhaps for generations. The walls know exactly how to survive another winter. The wind arrives again, this time stronger. It presses against the turf-covered roof before rushing over it with a deep, rolling sigh. For a moment, the smoke hole whispers softly as the draft changes direction. The embers glow brighter. Then everything settles once more. Nearby, someone turns over beneath a wool blanket. The straw mattress rustles quietly. A wooden bed frame gives a gentle groan before becoming still again. Across the room, another sleeper breathes deeply, the slow rhythm steady and reassuring. Every person seems to breathe at a slightly different pace. Together they form an almost gentle chorus. The youngest child lets out a sleepy murmur, perhaps chasing something pleasant in a dream. A mother instinctively reaches over, resting one hand lightly upon the blanket without ever opening her eyes. Within moments, the child grows quiet again. The gesture is so natural that it hardly disturbs the night's calm. Near the animal enclosure, the sheep remain peaceful. One exhales through its nose with a soft huff. A goat shifts in the straw. The old family dog sighs heavily before stretching its legs without fully waking. Somewhere in the darkness, the cat continues its silent patrol. You never hear its footsteps, only the faint scrape of something small disappearing behind a grain chest. The stores are safe for another night. Even the weather has its own rhythm. Snow brushes gently against the outer walls. Now and then, a heavier clump slides from the roof, landing with a soft thud that is quickly swallowed by the thick blanket of snow below. The storm no longer sounds fierce. It sounds distant, as though the Longhouse itself has wrapped everyone inside a warm cocoon, while winter quietly continues its work beyond the walls. Your own breathing begins to match the peaceful rhythm around you. The warmth beneath your blankets feels steady now. No longer remarkable. Simply comforting. Your body has stopped thinking about the cold. It has accepted the shelter surrounding it. It is easy to imagine complete silence in places like this. But true silence almost never exists. Instead, there is a living quiet. A quiet filled with tiny sounds that reassure rather than disturb. The settling of timber. The breathing of loved ones. The slow heartbeat of the fire. The whisper of snow. The distant wind crossing frozen fields. These are the sounds that generations of Viking families carried with them into sleep. Many probably never notice them consciously, just as people today stop noticing the ticking of a familiar clock or the gentle hum of a refrigerator. Yet if those sounds suddenly disappeared, something would feel wrong. You close your eyes. Without seeing the room, you can almost picture every corner through sound alone. The glowing hearth, the hanging cloaks, the stacked firewood, the sleeping family, the quiet animals. Everything remains exactly where it should be. The Longhouse is alive, not because it moves, but because it shelters life. Its sounds are not noise. They are quiet promises, promises that the fire still burns, that the walls still stand, that your family is safe, and that, despite the endless winter waiting outside, this small corner of the world remains warm enough to carry everyone gently through the night. At some point, you stop listening for individual sounds. The fire, the wind, the breathing of those around you. They no longer seem separate. Together, they become a single, gentle rhythm that fills the Longhouse. It is a rhythm your body begins to trust. Your eyes grow heavier. The warmth beneath the blankets settles comfortably around you, while the last traces of cold finally disappear from your hands and feet. Outside, the storm continues its quiet work across the snow-covered landscape. Inside, time seems to slow. There is nothing left to do tonight. No fields to tend. No wood to split. No animals to gather. Morning is still many hours away. For now, simply resting is enough. The embers glow softly beneath a blanket of pale ash. Every so often, a tiny thread of orange light appears as a hidden coal shifts beneath the surface. The fire is smaller now than it was after supper, yet it still gives enough warmth to hold the darkness at bay. Someone will tend it before dawn. They always do. No one speaks anymore. The last whispered conversations ended long ago. Even the children who struggled to stay awake have surrendered to sleep. One lies curled beneath a thick sheepskin, clutching a small carved wooden toy that slowly slips from relaxed fingers onto the blanket. No one notices. Or perhaps everyone notices, and chooses not to disturb such peaceful sleep. Across the room, an older man quietly snores. Not loudly, just enough to remind everyone that another long day of work has come to an end. The familiar sound blends naturally into the gentle chorus of breathing that fills the house. Above, the smoke continues its slow journey toward the opening in the roof. The air is hazy but calm. The scent of burning birch lingers softly, mixing with wool, timber, leather, and dried herbs hanging from the beams. These are the scents of home. They cling to clothing, to blankets, to memories. Years from now, another winter evening will smell exactly the same. Your body sinks a little deeper into the straw mattress. Earlier it felt firm. Now it feels surprisingly comfortable. The straw shifts almost silently beneath the sheepskin, supporting your weight without complaint. After walking through snow, carrying wood, tending animals, or working with tools from sunrise until darkness, comfort requires very little. Exhaustion has a way of making simple things feel luxurious. The old dog near the hearth opens its eyes for only a moment. Its ears lift slightly as another gust brushes against the walls. Satisfied that everything remains as it should, it circles once upon its blanket before settling down again with a long, contented sigh. Outside, snow continues to gather across the roof. Each fresh layer muffles the sounds of the world a little more. The forests, the frozen fields, the distant shoreline. Everything seems wrapped beneath one endless white blanket. Only the wind still remembers the open spaces. Inside the longhouse, the air remains still. Warm, safe, protected. You think for a moment about all the hands that made this shelter possible. The trees that were felled, the beams carefully raised into place, the turf cut from the earth and laid upon the roof, the wool spun into blankets, the hides prepared for bedding, the countless hours of work hidden inside every corner of this home. A Viking longhouse was never built in a single day. It was built season after season, year after year. Every repair added another chapter to its story. Every winter proved its worth once again. Your breathing slows. Thoughts begin to drift like snowflakes beyond the walls. The distinction between wakefulness and dreaming grows softer. The crackling fire sounds farther away now. The wind feels more distant. Even the weight of your blankets seems to disappear. Sleep arrives quietly. Not all at once, but little by little, like snow settling upon a silent field. No one marks the exact moment. There is no final conversation, no closing ceremony. Only the peaceful certainty that everyone beneath this roof has done enough for one day. The fire still glows. The walls still stand. The family rests together beneath the same roof that has sheltered them through countless winters before. And as your eyes finally close completely, the long Scandinavian night gently carries you into sleep. For a long while, nothing changes. The fire continues to glow beneath its blanket of ash. The wind still moves across the roof. The family sleeps. The longhouse rests in that quiet moment that comes just before the world begins to wake. Outside, the night has reached its coldest hour. This is often the harshest part of a winter day in Scandinavia. The warmth gathered during yesterday has long since faded from the frozen ground. The sun is still hidden below the horizon. Even the trees seem to stand perfectly still beneath the weight of fresh snow. Inside, the air feels cooler than it did before you fell asleep. Not cold, simply quieter. The embers have done their work through the night, slowly releasing the heat stored inside each carefully chosen log. Now they wait, almost hidden beneath pale grey ash. Then, someone moves. Not suddenly, not with urgency, only with the calm confidence of someone who has repeated the same morning countless times before. An older member of the household quietly rises from beneath a wool blanket. The movement is slow enough that no one else awakens. Bare feet touch the wooden floor. A thick cloak is wrapped around tired shoulders. The house remains wrapped in silence. Only the soft rustle of wool accompanies each careful step toward the hearth. The figure kneels beside the fire. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a wooden poker gently pushes aside the layer of ash. Beneath it, a deep orange glow still lives. The fire never truly disappeared. It was only sleeping. A handful of dry twigs is placed carefully across the embers. Nothing more. There is no need to hurry. A patient breath. A second. Then another. A thin ribbon of smoke rises. One tiny flame appears. Then another. Within moments, the fire begins its quiet return. No loud crackling. No sudden blaze. Only the slow rebirth of warmth. The first task of the new day has begun. Across the room, the old dog lifts its head. Its ears twitch. Satisfied, it curls back into its blanket. One of the sheep stirs softly behind the partition. A goat answers with a quiet snort before settling once more. The house is waking gently. Not all at once. Little by little. The fresh fire begins to warm the iron cooking pot hanging above it. Soon water will be heated. Porridge prepared. Yesterday's bread warmed beside the coals. Another ordinary winter morning is quietly beginning. High above, the smoke finds its familiar path toward the opening in the roof. This time, however, something new appears. The faintest trace of pale blue light. At first, you almost miss it. It is so soft that it barely changes the darkness. But slowly, very slowly, the color deepens. The longest part of the night has passed. Morning is returning. Outside, the storm has finally moved on. The world lies beneath a smooth blanket of untouched snow. Fence posts wear white caps. The roofs of nearby buildings blend gently into the surrounding landscape. Every tree branch sparkles beneath a thin layer of frost. No footprints disturb the fields. For a few precious moments, everything is perfectly still. Inside the longhouse, people begin to wake one by one. A child stretches beneath a sheepskin. Someone quietly yawns. Another reaches, instinctively, toward the growing warmth of the fire. No one rushes. The day will bring enough work soon enough. There will be animals to feed, water to carry, wood to split, tools to repair, snow to clear from the doorway. Life continues exactly as it did yesterday, and as it will tomorrow. You sit quietly, watching the flames grow stronger. The warmth reaches your hands once again. Outside, winter remains every bit as powerful as it was the evening before. The forests are still frozen. The wind will almost certainly return before nightfall. Nothing about nature has become easier. And yet, everything feels different. Not because the cold has disappeared, but because you now understand how people lived with it. A Viking winter was never conquered through strength alone. It was endured through preparation, through patience, through knowledge passed from one generation to the next, through warm clothing woven by careful hands, through food preserved months before the first snowfall, through roofs built to withstand heavy storms, through fires tended with quiet devotion, and above all, through families who faced the longest nights together. As the first true rays of the northern morning slip gently into the longhouse, they mingle with the golden glow of the hearth. For a brief moment, cold daylight and warm firelight share the same room. It is a simple sight, yet one that has greeted countless generations before you. You take one final look around the longhouse. The sturdy timber beams, the woven blankets, the well-worn wooden bowls, the glowing fire, the people beginning another ordinary day. There are no legendary battle. A's here. No kings, no famous warriors, only a family, a home, and another winter morning that they have survived together. Thank you for spending this quiet winter night in the Viking Age. Sleep well, and I'll see you on our next journey into history.